Arca, the woman who's seriously making me doubt my heterosexuality with her gorgeous looks and incredible, incredible music. Just to get the elephant out of the room right from the start, Arca was biologically born male but transitioned into female, so I'll be using her preferred gender pronouns, which happen to be she, her, it, and they throughout this entire video. All that being said, hey crew, welcome to ASTROBABES, the series in which I interpret the birth charts of famous female celebrities for your viewing pleasure. As you noticed, in today's episode we are going to be analyzing the birth chart of the Venezuelan visionary and multi-talented artist Arca. In spite of the fact that Arca's music could sound very weird and quite edgy the first time when you hear it, she is an artist for everybody, and I think we just need to learn to open our minds a little bit in order to truly appreciate her genius. To me, she's part of the trio of the holy future female voices, which means that she creates music that seems to be channeled from the distant future into the present moment. Whenever I listen to Arca, I feel like I'm some sort of planet engaged in an intimate act of cosmic proportions. So her music is reminiscent to me of the music created by the Swedish group I Am I Who Am I, or by the British artist FKA Twigs, which I'm thinking of including in one of our next AstroBabes clips, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. But coming back to Arca, she rose to popularity after the release of her string of albums called Kicks. There are 5 volumes of this album, and Kick 3, to my mind, is magnificent. It's like a prayer from the divine in synth form, layered with all sorts of cacophonies and messy collage kind of sounds that seem to be channeled from the midpoint between hell and heaven, I guess limbo. Just as a fun fact, Arca actually contributed as a producer to the sounds that you can hear on the background of FK Twigs' album LP1. Not only that, but Arca apparently produced some of the music on Kanye West's album Yeezus. She managed to distill into her own work, which she brought to the public with the creation of Kicks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I really wish I could play you a little bit of her music so you can have a taste, but unfortunately, due to copyright, I'm not able to play her music in my video, but I did post a link down below. Check out Fantano. He has a channel where he is sampling the entirety of Arca's albums and he reviews them as well, and he's really entertaining to actually listen to, so make sure to check him out. Coming back to our astrological business, I wanted to do her chart for a very, very long time because I am so drawn not only to her music but her lyrics as well. I think it's really interesting how in certain songs, like one of my personal favorite, Desafío, Arca sings Listo o no, hay un abismo dentro de mí, which basically could be translated into ready or not, there's extreme darkness inside of me. In other instances, for example in Horror Song, she softly ends the lyrics by saying a bloodlust for all the beauty. In another favorite song of mine, Luna Llena, she croons Vengo a reventarte, which, by the way, is an awesome Spanish word which can mean so many different things and it can be applied to so many badass contexts, and I'm so happy that I got to learn it through her. So I was always curious, why would she reflect on these aspects that seem to rely on what some musical analysts have called the divinity of abjection? And I've always been fascinated by this contradictory mélange that Arca portends. And then when I had a look at her chart, yeah, I noticed why that happens. I highly recommend that you go and listen to her music. I'm not even able to show you a lot of the artistry of her imagery and the way in which she styles herself because most of the time Our Lady loves to show her flesh, and you know, YouTube is going crazy lately with all these censorship issues. Have a look at her photos, listen to her music. I hope that at least I will give you some sort of curious take on her personality and on her work. You guys know that if you've been on my channel and you follow this series, I like to focus not on everything that I could talk about in a person's chart, but on the 5 key aspects that truly stand out to me as significant to her work and her personality. I also think that there is always an astrological reason for why certain people do the kind of work that they do, and with Arca, after I had a look at her chart, It didn't disappoint me. It was all there. Why her music is so jagged, edgy, and out of this world progressive? Now, before you ask me, no, there is no way to actually find in a person's chart whether they will transition from male to female. There are certain propensities, there is a certain energetic imprint that could tell you that an individual lives with an intense conflict regarding the gender that they were born with. And usually that speaks to some squares in that person's chart, especially related to the planet Venus and Mars. But right off the bat, I'm here to let you know, you cannot tell whether somebody is going to turn transsex throughout their life just based on a snapshot view of their birth chart. Much like in the same way that you cannot tell whether a person is going to be the next Gandhi or the next Ted Bundy. Since astrological birth charts, they show us the propensities, the potentialities with which we are born, and then it's up to our free will to make the best of that kind of energy. So each person throughout their lives gets a fair share of rational control over the energies that they were born with, to do with them as they please, to use them for creation and artistry and cultural products, or self-destruction and complete annihilation of their spirit. So before I actually dive into the 5 core aspects that to me seem significant as an astrologer from Arca's chart, here is her birth chart. Number 1, the big threes. So these represent the positions of the sun, the moon, and the ascendant in an individual's chart. In our case, unfortunately, Arca is just one of those people whose birth time we don't know. So we don't know her ascendant, we just have the big 2s. Arca is a sun in Libra and a moon in Aries, which is fascinating because it shows right off the bat 2 things. That she lives with a very contradictory male and female energy because her sun is ruled by Venus, Venus being the natural ruler of Libra, and her interior world, emotions and unconscious are ruled by Mars, the planet that rules over the sign of Aries. Another thing that this placement shows me is that Arca was born on a full moon. Usually when we have moon sitting opposite from the sun, it's an astrological indicator that this person was born on a night with a full moon, which again talks about integrating polar opposites, yin and yang, masculine and feminine, aggression and love, desire and lust, and also reconciliation, negotiation, and peace. So the very first thing about her chart is the fact that she lives with this internal contradiction between love and war, between masculinity and femininity. And her emotions are incredibly heightened. Being born with a fiery moon in Aries and on the night of a full moon makes her life on the path of full completion. She's naturally able to attract towards her all the experiences that she desires. And this leads me to the second point in her chart that I find to be ultra significant to the type of work that she feels compelled to do. Number 2, and this is super interesting. Arca was born with a south node in Leo and a north node in Aquarius. Now, the north node represents the growth zone in her chart, and the south node represents her comfort zone. In the first part of our lives, up until the age of 30, around the Saturn return cutoff point, the energy in our lives tends to be the one that we have been born with, the one that we have acquired from previous experiences in our past lives. It tends to be under the mark of our south node. So Arca was born incredibly attractive because Leos tend to be quite magnetic and tend to pull towards them all of the experiences that they need in their life in order to grow. Leos tend to be naturally good at whatever they set their mind to. They tend to be loyal and attached to their families, but they tend to also be quite unhealthily traditional in certain respects, in the sense that they tend to just absorb the received knowledge in their culture and in their family without necessarily questioning it. It's kind of the like of, I'm doing what I'm doing because my father and mother before me have done this and my grandparents before me have done this, and I enjoy stability and wealth, and I'm just going to push forward with this energy. Now, the fact that Arca has a north node in Aquarius shows me that she was born to grow out of these patterns, to challenge the status quo, to break out of traditionalism and receive knowledge. Oh boy, Arca has truly embraced her north node, mostly because her sun in Libra sits in such a beautiful harmonious trine with her North Node in Aquarius. So it tends to be quite easy for her to fall into the path of pursuing her destiny because she's generally excited about the experiences that the North Node in Aquarius keeps attracting in her life. So pinging back from the first point where I talked about the Sun in Libra versus Moon in Aries conflict, both of these energies are really fired up by the North Node in Aquarius. So Arca finds it very easy to adopt progressive ideas because she is ruled by an air sign energy, being the Sun in Libra. Her Moon in Aries wants her to create, to express herself, to be brave, to find something that she can fight for, which is LGBTQ rights and choosing to be the gender that she feels most comfortable in a world that increasingly tells people like her that she has no place in society. So I love the fact that she's using this brave inner fire to break through these constricting and old-fashioned gender norms. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's 2023, people. Can we just lay off on all this binary denominations? But anyway, I know I'm preaching to the right choir here because I know that most of you are also part of the LGBTQ community, or at least you're allies like myself, promoting gender equality rights and the rights of non-binary individuals. Coming back to her North Node in Aquarius, I remember that I read something in an interview where she was describing the process of making music, and she talks with such passion about broken beats and non-harmonious sounds and clashes of sound coming together. And I thought that was fascinating that she tends to be attracted to this chaotic sound landscape. But then again, when you have a look at her chart and you see the North Node in Aquarius, you would go like, ah, this makes sense. Aquarians have beautiful, brilliant minds. Usually the things that they are attracted to and the things they like to talk about, write about, work towards tend to be years ahead of their generation. But this gives them a sense of not being understood, of being outcasts, of being unfairly criticized by people around them just because society hasn't really leveled up as quickly as they are able to. Aquarians are also quite electric. They have this chaotic energy about them. And if you have a look at Arca's Instagram, she usually does these beautiful lives where she dances to the music of her albums, or she challenges people, or she claps back at individuals that disrespect her. And when I see those lives, to me, they speak so strongly of this North Node in Aquarius energy, which I love so much because coincidentally, I have Venus in Aquarius. So I'm utterly drawn to anything Aquarius related. So to sum up, we can see very clearly that Arca's South Node in Leo and Moon in Aries, these fire energies, are truly receiving a lot of oxygen in order to fire themselves up from the North Node in Aquarius and this beautiful trine that it's creating to the Sun in Libra in Arca's chart. So we see how comfort and growth, emotions and ambitious life goals tend to be blended in a really beautiful way in her chart. Let's talk a bit more in depth about Arca's Sun, because her Sun has a lot of interesting influences around it. The Sun basically shows what our life revolves around, and I can see that having a Sun in Libra revolves around the creation of art for Arca. Libras could be wonderful politicians, poets, and especially artists because they have very refined senses and a very sweet understanding of their personal reality and how they can make it better, how they can improve it. Now, the interesting aspect is that Arca has her Sun conjunct Mars, the planet of aggression, feistiness, and courage, and also the asteroid Lilith. We see Mercury there as well, which is not an uncommon thing because usually most people in this world have the Sun conjunct Mercury due to the fact that Mercury moves very quickly and travels at the same speed, more or less, with the Sun's rotation through each constellation. The really important aspect there is Lilith. Usually, if you're an astrologer that doesn't pay attention to asteroids, you would miss this really important way in which Arca's energy is colored in the energy of the wild feminine archetype. Make sure to check out my Lilith clip. I actually go in depth regarding Lilith's energy if you're curious to find out more. And please keep in mind that as well as an astrologer, I offer personalized birth chart reports in which I talk about Lilith's energy and how it might color your birth chart in a specific light. Coming back to Arca again after this shameful personal advertisement. So Arca has the energy of the wild feminine archetype, that unruly, that obsessively dark and instinctually sexy vibration that Lilith brings, in combination with Mars. So yes, if you're thinking about a person that lives with some very strong male and female archetypes inside of herself, then this is Arca. Now, whether this would actually push an individual to live the lifestyle that they feel internally conflicted with, that's a whole other subject. And as I said, it pertains to our free will, our moods, the money that we have, the privilege that we can access. But it is important to keep in mind that on a spiritual level, there is this fierce battle inside of Arca between what is it to be male and what is it to be female. And this is so beautifully reflected in her songs, which portray these intensely erotic but also quite abysmal relationship dynamics. Themes such as subjugation, domination, giving your power away, being paper thin, vulnerable in front of somebody, feeling neglected, feeling love, asking somebody to chase you, feeling desired, or wanting to experience the depths of sexuality with your partner. All of these emerge from her music, and maybe that's why I love it so much. You know, my very strong Pluto in the first house cannot resist this. But we can see that her sun is supercharged, important yin and yang polarities that appear very strongly from having Lilith, Mercury, and Mars conjunct her sun. Now, the fact that she has Mars conjunct Mercury gives her that incredible speed when she speaks. So this is why her capacity to process information could be quite enhanced, and this is why she might be so good at rapping, because Mars gives an extra boost of speed to an already speedy information processing delivered by Mercury in a really good sign, which is Libra, the sign of mind, and also the sign of fair, balanced negotiations, of understanding your point of view, my point of view, the world's point of view. A moon in Aries is not necessarily the softest, most tender kind of energy, and we can see this kind of vibration reflected in her on stage performances. I feel that she genuinely enjoys dancing and performing. She was born for it with a moon in Aries. Usually individuals that have a lot of fiery energy end up becoming showmen, showwomen, performers, artists, actors, dancers, singers, because that feisty energy gives them the confidence to be able to boldly and proudly sit in front of a public and show the world who they really are. So a lot of her desires and this inner landscape fraught with instinct, creativity, passion, but also bloodlust and a sort of obsession with beauty and what you can do to beauty, or how beauty can be transformed into something more darker, or how beauty can be annihilated. All these energies are reflected in the dark unconscious that is ruled by Mars in Arca's chart. But obviously, all is not just wine and roses with Arca. As much as I love her, she does live with some pretty tense energies. And this is described in the fact that her planet Jupiter, in the gorgeously nurturing sign of Cancer, is doing one of the heaviest heavy lifting positions that I've seen in anyone's chart. So Jupiter in Cancer is creating so many squares, and it's holding, like a very unstable root, a lot of the energies of all the other planets, as you can see in this image here. Arca has 3 T-squares in her chart. I mean, 1 T-square is enough to give a person a lifetime of headaches, because the person lives with such contradictory energy that pulls your mind and your unconscious apart. But having 3 T-squares, this talks about an individual that lives with so much pressure on the inside. But now you might think, why would an individual be born with so much pressure on the inside? Well, that's the trick. So many squares in an individual's chart show the potential for this person to be dynamic, to have a really busy life. And not only that, but people that have squares tend to achieve many more things than people that have more trines and sextiles in their chart. Sure, the other ones have more peaceful lives, but people with a lot of squares end up being those ambitious go-getters, those pioneers that we love and we admire, and we pay lots of money to attend their shows or buy their books or go to their TED Talks. So these T-squares in the chart that are mostly supported by that root of Jupiter in Cancer shows that by focusing on her emotions, by looking at her cultural roots, and by drawing inspiration from her culture, she is able to parse through that internal conflict between what it means to be male and female. But it has to happen on an emotional level. It has to happen through creativity, and it has to happen by going back to her own native tongue, to her own cultural influences. So that's why we see so strongly that she mostly sings in Spanish in her songs, and I absolutely love that artistic decision. And that's why we see so beautifully how in moments of intense aggression and chaotic mess and these kind of weird synth sounds that keep piggybacking off of each other and you're wondering, what am I listening to? All of a sudden she delivers an utterly poetic line that leaves you flabbergasted. That is Jupiter in Cancer, pinging at our emotions, tugging at our heartstrings, making us cry when we listen one of her songs, like for example the incredibly vulnerable Anoche. And last but never least, let's talk about her stellium in Capricorn, because this is again the influence that contributes to all of these tense red aspects in her chart that you see here. So a stellium is basically a grouping of planets in a specific sign, and it shows that you really need to focus in this lifetime on that specific house of your chart, and you really need to embody or work with or collaborate, negotiate with that astrological influence in order to be successful, or in order to survive, to thrive, if that is possible. So not only does Arca have a stellium of planets in Libra, but she also has a conglomeration of 3 planets in the sign of Capricorn, with Saturn leading the way. Saturn is domicile in Capricorn together with Uranus and Neptune. What does this all mean? Well, it basically means that if you have a highly developed and well-functioning Saturn like she does, she understands social boundaries, she understands hierarchies, she understands how to work with the rule of the father. Case in point, Arca was born in a relatively resource-poor region of the world in Venezuela, which, much like Romania, for example, is not a country that you would necessarily go to in order to make it big and live really wealthy. But she was born in a wealthy family because her father is an investment banker. So I guess that she partook in certain economic privileges that were not possible for other people in the same cultural environment in which she was born. But nonetheless, she was influenced by her Venezuelan heritage, and we can see that beautiful energy in some of the artistic choices that she makes in her songs. So living within a certain degree of privilege and then having to forego that privilege in order to undergo a transformation of your body, of your gender, is a pretty ballsy move to make, and that's why I admire her so much. I mean, she often talks in her Instagram stories about how difficult it is to live in this environment, but she never complains about the hate that she might sometimes get just because she decided to become female. And I truly admire that. It shows how beautifully she understands social rules and social etiquette. This also pings back on the fact that she is a sun in Libra, so Libras naturally are very charming and polite, and they know how to speak and when to also be silent. But we see there that with Saturn in Capricorn, she has this sense of, how can I bring things from the ether, from my mind, into reality, into something tangible, pragmatic, and also into something that can help me live a good life. For example, the selling of albums or going on tours. So Saturn conjunct Neptune, especially in the grounded building sign of Capricorn, shows that she is meant to bring into reality a new social structure. She is meant to create a new artistic landscape, one that has the tendency to live for a very long time, long after she will be gone from this earthly plane. Not only that, but Uranus being there, well, it colors the whole energy with an extra splash of pizzazz. It brings a sense of extravagance to the structure that Arca is building in her day-to-day work environment. So she has the capacity to follow limits and to work within the boundaries that are placed in front of her. She has the capacity to bring a dream from the ether and to manifest it by daily working at her craft with Neptune in Capricorn. And Uranus in Capricorn gives her this taste for edgy things, experimental energies, for slashed kind of sounds that she tends to import into her songs. So this is why I think that her music is so important and will tend to pass the test of time. Anyway, these were my 2 astrological cents regarding her chart. I absolutely love her as an artist. Please send her some love. Please subscribe to her channel, listen to her music. Just give her some love because she is such a phenomenal artist. And yeah, I could sit here and talk all week about her chart, but I don't want to make this video too long. I don't want to take too much of your precious time. Thank you so much for listening. If you're a patron on my Patreon account, thank you. Please consider checking those things out. If you don't want to contribute in any financial way to this channel, that's okay. I love you anyway. Thank you for being here and just for listening to my astrological birth chart interpretation. Keep in mind, I offer personal birth chart readings. The second link in the description box takes you to my website where you can see a range of options and services. Thank you guys once again, and I cannot wait to see you on the next installment of Astro Babes. Mi muñecas preciosas.